So spake the Son of God, and Satan stood a while as mute confounded, what to say, what to reply, confuted and convinced of his weak arguing and fallacious drift. At length, collecting all his serpent wiles, with soothing words renewed, him thus accosts. I see thou knowest what is of use to know, what best to say canst say, to do canst do. Thy actions to thy words accord, thy words to thy large heart give utterance due. Thy heart contains of good, wise, just, the perfect shape. Should kings and nations from thy mouth consult, thy counsel would be as the oracle Urim and Thummim, those oraculous gems on Aaron's breast, or tongue of seers old, infallible. Or wert thou sought to deeds that might require the array of war, thy skill of conduct would be such that all the world could not sustain thy prowess, or subsist in battle, though against thy few in arms. These godlike virtues wherefore dost thou hide, affecting private life, or more obscure, in savage wilderness? Wherefore deprive all earth her wonder at thy acts, thyself the fame and glory, glory the reward, that soul excites to high attempts the flame of most erected spirits, most tempered pure, ethereal, who all pleasures else despise, all treasures and all gain esteem as dross, and dignities and powers all but the highest. Thy years are ripe, and overripe. The son of Macedonian Philip had ere these won Asia, and the throne of Cyrus held at his dispose. Young Scipio had brought down the Carthaginian pride, young Pompey quelled the Pontic king, and in triumph had rode. Yet years, and to ripe years judgment mature, quench not the thirst of glory, but augment. Great Julius, whom now all the world admires, the more he grew in years, the more inflamed with glory, wept that he had lived so long inglorious. But thou yet art not too late. To whom our Saviour calmly thus replied, Thou neither dost persuade me to seek wealth for empire's sake, nor empire to affect for glory's sake by all thy argument. For what is glory but the blaze of fame, the people's praise, if always praise unmixed? And what the people but a herd confused, a miscellaneous rabble who extol things vulgar, and well weighed, scarce worth the praise. They praise and they admire, they know not what, and know not whom, but as one leads the other. And what delight to be by such extolled, to live upon their tongues and be their talk, of whom to be dispraised were no small praise. His lot who dares to be singularly good. The intelligent among them and the wise are few, and glory scarce of few is raised. This is true glory and renown, when God, looking on the earth, with approbation marks the just man, and divulges him through heaven to all his angels, who with true applause recount his praises. Thus he did to Job, when to extend his fame through heaven and earth, as thou to thy reproach mayest well remember, he asked thee, Hast thou seen my servant Job? Famous he was in heaven, on earth less known, where glory is false glory, attributed to things not glorious, men not worthy of fame. They err who count it glorious to subdue by conquest far and wide, to overrun large countries, and in field great battles win, great cities by assault. What do these worthies but rob and spoil, burn, slaughter, and enslave peaceable nations, neighboring or remote, made captive, yet deserving freedom more than those their conquerors, who leave behind nothing but ruin wheresoe'er they rove, and all the flourishing works of peace destroy. Then swell with pride, and must be titled gods, great benefactors of mankind, deliverers, worshipped with temple, priest, and sacrifice. One is the son of Jove, of Mars the other, till conqueror Death discover them scarce men, rolling in brutish vices, and deformed, violent or shameful death their due reward. But if there be in glory aught of good, it may by means far different be attained, without ambition, war, or violence, by deeds of peace, by wisdom eminent, by patience, temperance. I mention still him whom thy wrongs, with saintly patience borne, made famous in a land and times obscure, who names not now with honor patient Job, poor Socrates, who next more memorable, by what he taught and suffered for so doing, for truth's sake, suffering death unjust, lives now equal in fame to proudest conquerors. Yet if for fame and glory aught be done, aught suffered, if young African for fame his wasted country freed from Punic rage, the deed becomes unpraised, the man at least, and loses, though but verbal, his reward. Shall I seek glory then, as vain men seek, oft not deserved? I seek not mine, but his, who sent me, and thereby witness whence I am. To whom the tempter, murmuring, thus replied, Think not so slight of glory, therein least resembling thy great Father. He seeks glory, and for his glory all things made, all things orders and governs, nor content in heaven, by all his angels glorified, requires glory from men. From all men, good or bad, wise or unwise, no difference, no exemption, above all sacrifice or hallowed gift, glory he requires, and glory he receives, promiscuous from all nations, Jew or Greek or barbarous, nor exemption hath declared. From us his foes pronounce glory he exacts. To whom our Saviour fervently replied, And reason, since his word all things produced, though chiefly not for glory as prime end, but to show forth his goodness, and impart his good communicable to every soul freely, of whom what could he less expect than glory and benediction, that is thanks, the slightest, easiest, readiest recompense, from them who could return him nothing else, and not returning that would likeliest render contempt instead, dishonor, obliquity, hard recompense, unsuitable return for so much good, so much beneficence. But why should man seek glory, who of his own hath nothing, and to whom nothing belongs but condemnation, ignominy, and shame? Who for so many benefits received turned recreant to God, ingrate and false, and so of all true good himself despoiled, yet sacrilegious, to himself would take that which to God alone of right belongs. Yet so much bounty is in God, such grace, that who advance his glory, not their own, them he himself the glory will advance. So spake the Son of God. And here again Satan had not to answer, but stood struck with guilt of his own sin. For he himself, insatiable of glory, had lost all. Yet of another plea bethought him soon. Of glory as thou wilt, said he. So deem worth or not worth the seeking, let it pass. But to a kingdom thou art born, ordained to sit upon thy father David's throne, by mother's side, thy father, though thy right be now in powerful hands, that will not part easily from possession, won with arms, Judea now, and all the promised land reduced a province under Roman yoke, obeys Tiberius, nor is always ruled with temperate sway. Oft have they violated the temple, oft the law, with foul affronts, abominations rather, as did once Antiochus. And think'st thou to regain thy right by sitting still, or thus retiring? So did not Maccabeus. He indeed retired unto the desert, but with arms, and o'er a mighty king so oft prevailed, that by strong hand his family obtained, though priests, the crown and David's throne usurped, with Modin and her suburbs once content. If kingdom move thee not, let move thee zeal and duty. Zeal and duty are not slow, but on occasions forelock, watchful wait. They themselves rather are occasion best, zeal of thy father's house, duty to free thy country from her heathen servitude. So shalt thou best fulfill, best verify the prophets old who sung thy endless reign. The happier reign, the sooner it begins. Reign then. What canst thou better do the while? To whom our Saviour answer thus returned: All things are best fulfilled in their due time, and time there is for all things, truth hath said. If of my reign prophetic writ hath told that it shall never end, so when begin the Father in his purpose hath decreed, he in whose hand all times and seasons roll. What if he hath decreed that I shall first be tried in humble state, and things adverse by tribulations, injuries, insults, contempts and scorns and snares and violence, suffering, abstaining, quietly expecting, without distrust or doubt, that he may know what I can suffer, how obey? Who best can suffer, best can do, best reign, who first well hath obeyed? Just trial ere I merit my exaltation without change or end. But what concerns it thee when I begin my everlasting kingdom? Why art thou solicitous? What moves thy inquisition? Knowest thou not that my rising is thy fall, and my promotion will be thy destruction? To whom the tempter, inly racked, replied, Let that come when it comes. All hope is lost of my reception into grace. What worse? For where no hope is left no fear. If there be worse, the expectation more of worse torments me than the feeling can. I would be at the worst. Worst is my port, my harbor, and my ultimate repose. The end I would attain, my final good. My error was my error, and my crime my crime. Whatever for itself condemned, and will alike be punished, whether thou reign or reign not, though to that gentle brow willingly I could fly, and hope thy reign from that placid aspect and meek regard, rather than aggravate my evil state, would stand between me and thy father's ire, whose ire I dread more than the fire of hell, a shelter and a kind of shading cool interposition as a summer's cloud. If I then to the worst that can be haste, why move thy feet so slow to what is best? Happiest both to thyself and all the world, that thou who worthiest art shouldst be their king. Perhaps thou lingerest in deep thoughts detained of the enterprise so hazardous and high. No wonder, for thou in thee be united what of perfection can in man be found, or human nature can receive. Consider thy life hath yet been private, most part spent at home, scarce viewed the Galilean towns. And once a year Jerusalem, few days, short sojourn. And what thence couldst thou observe? The world thou hast not seen, much less her glory, empires and monarchs, and their radiant courts. Best school of best experience. Quickest in sight, in all things that to greatest actions lead. The wisest, unexperienced, will be ever timorous and loth, with novice modesty, as he who seeking asses found a kingdom, irresolute, unhardy, unadventurous. But I will bring thee where thou soon shalt quit those rudiments, and see before thine eyes the monarchies of the earth, their pomp and state, sufficient introduction to inform thee of thyself so apt in regal arts, and regal mysteries, that thou mayest know how best their opposition to withstand.